Hello and welcome to the Home Screen Podcast. This is episode 21 and today I'm joined again by Charlotte.
Hello there.
Last time you were on was episode 13 for Alien Romulus, and today we're going to be talking about the film Hundreds of Beavers. We actually saw this last week in Manchester at Cultplex. They put on a screening there, which we went to. It was really cool actually because after the screening there was a nice Q&A with Ryland, who's the star of Hundreds of Beavers. It's a cool special treat because at the end of the episode we're actually going to hear a brief message from Ryland from we chatted to him at that stand at the end. But before we get to that, we'll discuss our thoughts on the film. Hundreds of Beavers. What do you think?
I thought it was amazing, very funny. You don't really see a lot of slapstick comedy anymore. Reminded me of like the Mr. Bean days, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very much. Like, I think he said in the Q&A about inspiration, almost like Charlie Chaplin, Morecambe and Wise, that type of thing. For those that don't know, Hundreds of Beavers is mostly silent. There's a few like odd words and grunts here and there, but it's like gibberish. A man who, in the 19th century, essentially, he's trying to become like the best fur trapper in the valley. All the animals are played by people in costumes, dressed up as beavers, wolves, raccoons, rabbits and such. I mean, it's just a big slapstick adventure of him doing, essentially, I think it was called like the Trapper's Trail, where trappers would basically set up about like 10 traps in a circuit, and then every day they would go and check them each and make small incremental changes to each of them. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really, really funny. Like you said, we so rarely get slapstick comedies nowadays. It was just so naturally funny. There's probably a few hundred jokes in this, and like they all worked. Like it was such a high like laughs per minute. Like every scene there was a good like 4 or 5 jokes that really worked.
And they all like linked together as well. If it was like a random joke, it wasn't like so random, it was odd. Like actually, like all the jokes worked so well together. The story all ties up really nicely, which is what I like.
What do you think of the visual effects side of it? Because obviously there's lots of like people in costumes running around, but there's a lot of like hand done animation.
I liked it, like the combination of the two. The animals and like were actually people but in costume, and then you had like the people who were people, but then everything else, like the trees, wasn't it? And
yeah, I mean they filmed in a forest, but there was a lot of like elements of like traps he'd build that were clearly very much where he would have been miming, I guess, in the scene, and then the trap was added afterwards with visual effects and stuff. Yeah, I think it was really like insanely clever, the amount of visual effects that were in this. So the director, Mike Cheslick, I'm pretty sure he was the director and the editor as well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the amount of visual effects shots was... Look, I don't think there was hardly shots in this that didn't require some kind of visual effects or compositing or something. The craziest part was the fact that they only had, he said in the Q&A, like 5 or 6 beaver outfits.
Yeah.
And at times there's hundreds. So they will have had to have shot like plates and layered so many shots. It's just so cleverly done.
I thought that was like the funniest thing, and then the dad had been really overprotective.
Yeah, that was like the running gag, which I think my favourite aspect is they really like gamified the movie.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, yeah, there's movies of games like Borderlands and Minecraft and stuff, but it's just the IP. It's just like, oh, this is just famous actors in a film that's called Minecraft or whatever. Whereas this really felt really gamey, in the sense that he would like set up all of his traps day by day, go and make tweaks. It's basically to like gather resources to buy upgrades from a shop, almost like you would in like Resident Evil or something.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like you were saying, there was like a funny like running joke about him trying to win the approval of the shopkeeper's daughter.
And I just found it funny how like when the main character would take his kill to the shop, when he'd like cut open the beaver outfit and there'd just be like organs, but they were like
plushy, soft
plushy
toy,
and just the fact that like that was their choice to use.
Yeah, they really lent into like the aspect that like everyone's aware that these are just people in costumes. Like they shoot the head off on the beavers at one point and just like stuffing like comes out of like the head.
Yeah.
And then at one point, I guess light spoilers, there's a horse character which they just couldn't be bothered to do a full costume for, so you could just see the guy's face. No, it was brilliant. Also, at the screening, they had a few people in costumes.
Yeah.
There was a character who I thought was Santa Claus at first, but turned out to be just another trapper. The guy with the beard and like the 5 or 6
look like
dogs.
Santa, didn't he?
We had one of those. I think he was called Sparky. We had a guy in a dog costume. One of the beavers, and then we also had
with the horse there as
the
well.
guy in the horse costume. It's just so cool to see like a film like this get made. Ryland said in the Q&A that this film, they kind of like shot it and finished shooting it like 2020, 2021, and then they first premiered it and started to show it in like autumn 2022. And then since then, for the last like 2.5 years, they've just been touring it around the world, doing different press tours and screenings and stuff. They're in the middle of doing a UK tour. I think Manchester's sort of like a third of the way through. I think it goes on until the rest of May. It's really cool, and I think that's a nice way to get more people to see your film. Like nowadays, so many films will be in cinemas for like, I don't know, 3 weeks, and then they're out, and then a few weeks later they're just dumped onto Netflix or Amazon Prime and stuff. But it doesn't feel special because there's hundreds and like thousands of films on Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon that like when you're scrolling through it, it's just like such a choice of what to watch. But going to like a screening like this where everyone in the room bought a ticket for it and was really up for it and like really wanted to be there.
Yeah, it was a good atmosphere.
It was really like such a cool atmosphere of like everyone laughing along. Loads of people had really like good questions. I feel like nowadays a lot of the time when you go to cinema, you hit people are just like on their phone or talking or eating loudly or walking in halfway through, whereas going to like a proper organised screening like this was like everyone wanted to be there. It was it was really cool.
And like even though I think Ryland mentioned it during the Q&A how like the big blockbuster companies are probably too afraid to use like slapstick comedy nowadays because they think, oh, I won't sell well or whatever, but there's still so many people laughing at the gags.
And like going on from that, he was saying that like it's universal. Like anyone around the world can find that funny. Almost any, like some jokes will probably appeal more and make more sense to like older people, but you could show this to like kids.
Oh yeah, they'd find it funny. Like there's no language barrier.
Exactly. So you can literally show it to anyone. It's got such a broad appeal.
Yeah.
I feel like I just wish there was more comedies like this made. Oh, this is very unique. It's quirky because it's so different. Like knowing the craft that went into it, knowing that there was a team of like 7 or 8 guys in the woods just filming over 2 winters, over 2 years, just running around in costumes, and then constructing this film like through the script and then through the edit with all the visual effects. I think it's just so impressive and such a feat.
Yeah, I want to watch it again.
And well, thankfully we got a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
We got a signed Blu-ray, so I'm definitely keen to watch it again. Definitely. It was quite funny as well going home and like chatting to my parents about it, and they seemed like they also wanted to watch it. Like slapstick comedy just has such a broad appeal, and like physical comedy as well, as you know from your dissertation.
Oh yeah.
Stuff like Mr. Bean, Morecambe and Wise. There was elements that were almost like Wallace and Gromit as well.
Yeah.
There's a chase scene towards the end that was very much like the Wrong Trousers chase scene, I thought.
Yeah.
Like, I guess also like brief spoilers now, we can talk about it. I mean, a lot of it is just like lots of just great jokes, but some I really wanted to mention that I thought were great. The sort of like final act where he's like tied down to the table and then breaks out and just just kills like everyone in the room. That was such a good scene. And like the reveal of like the Beaver space program where it's like underground and it reveals that there's a rocket and then accidentally launches the rocket. Like it was just such a fun film all in all. Like looking forward to watching it again, and like as soon as we finished it I was like I could just like stick that on again immediately.
Yeah.
It's
just definitely.
So rare.
It's a very feel good, like a comfort film.
Yeah. You can stick this on if you're in like sort of any mood. I think it's a very easy watch. Like I think that applies to a lot of slapstick, but it's such an easy watch. And like the game elements and how repetitive it is, for me personally, just like appealed so much.
Yeah.
I think it's the best thing I've seen this year, maybe, in terms of so far.
Ooh.
How about you?
Yeah, it's definitely up there.
So far?
Yeah.
As an experience and as an event, getting to go to see it with lots of fans, have a Q&A, the people in costumes, then get to chat to Ryland afterwards, I think it was really cool.
Yeah.
It does kind of make you want to go off and make a project, hearing stories about how they made this.
Yeah.
Like, especially with such like few people.
They didn't have like a huge budget for it as well.
I think they said that they started, because they had a film that came out before this, Lake Michigan Monster, which I think is kind of similar to this in the kind of like wacky humour and stuff. But yeah, I think they sort of started shooting this, made it sizzle reel, and then got more funding, and then it just kind of went from there. But the success of this film has just fully been like word of mouth and online people recommending it to each other. It never got a release in UK cinemas, I don't think, unless it had like 1 or 2 screenings at like a home cinema or something.
Yeah.
And now on Letterboxd, there's 136,000 people have logged this and seen this, according to Letterboxd.
That's so good.
Which is, I've got people on here that have logged this and watched this all the way back at film festivals in 2023. So it's nice that it's still being watched, appreciated, and the fan base is growing.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, even now, all the CVDs are really cool. Like they look like, it wasn't just like a logo slapped on a t-shirt or something. It was like little quirky patches.
There's some badges, isn't there?
Badges, posters, DVD. It was all very cool. And it's just so nice that like it just feels very like genuine. The small team promoting it, like with the stand going like place to place, getting to actually chat to the guy who's in it. Which we haven't really talked about his acting. I think he was just so
it was so good. Like,
so I guess it's a very specific style of acting to act so like over the top.
Yeah, but it actually works.
Yeah.
And just isn't like too like stupid.
Yeah. I guess how did you find acting in that sort of style? Because obviously for people watching that don't know, your dissertation at university was kind of like physical comedy.
Yeah.
And I felt like the acting style you had to do in that was kind of very similar.
Yeah, just like more of an expressive face. Obviously not making it like too over the top to the point where it just looks like a bit stupid, but like your facial reactions are just a lot more expressive than they usually would be, because having to do that so you can get across to the audience better, because obviously you're not using words, so a lot of it is in the face and like body language and stuff.
Purposefully like over exaggerated.
Yeah, and it's useful how a lot of silent comedies have music throughout. I suppose that kind of helps the audience to reflect on like the mood of the scene, or like when something changes, because they had like certain soundtracks for like certain like bits of the film as well.
Yeah, I think the soundtrack was really good.
Yeah.
I mean it was constant, apart from a few scenes where you just had the sound of like the wind.
Yeah.
The soundtrack was a big part of like enhancing the emotion I wanted to feel in the scene. Most of the time was just comedy.
Yeah.
I want to watch this again.
Yeah, definitely. And how like when he was selecting his choice, when he wanted to buy something from the shop, the sound like literally sounded like when you're playing like Super Mario Bros and you hit like the cube with the question mark and like ding.
Yeah, I wonder which games specifically were inspiration for this.
Yeah.
I definitely think like repetitive like grindy games.
Yeah, like Animal Crossing, Minecraft.
Yeah, kind of like survival games. I think Animal Crossing is probably quite a close comparison, where especially in the early game when you're setting up your island, you kind of wake up and then you do your routine until night time.
Yeah.
You like dig holes and do a bit of fishing, catch some bugs, pick up any message bottles, go to the shop, chat to villagers. You just kind of do your routine, get some stuff from the shop, and then go to bed, and then it kind of repeats. Yeah.
There's no killing beavers though.
There is much less killing beavers in Animal Crossing. But yeah, I think that kind of like repetitive routine nature of it, I think, was so funny. Like especially at the start, it shows him go through such a process of like setting up each trap, and it's funny watching them all fail. But towards the end, when he's like fully mastered it, is actually just like each trap, it just shows for like 2 seconds, and it's just like of how they're all working like comedically well now. Yeah,
there's a lot of moments where like we as an audience knew that something was coming. Like, is it the whistle he did? And then the woodpecker would come and like peck his head, and then whenever you like that, he'd do that whistle a few times throughout the film. Like, you cottoned on that when he did that, the woodpecker was gonna come and like knock him on the head.
And like using bits from other jokes to help in other areas. Like I think one of the areas there was like, lots of piles of poo. He would like collect the flies and then use the flies as bait to catch fish and stuff. Yeah. And all of that, which was like fully animated. I thought the fish was funny whenever the fish showed up, because it's very clear it's like a hand puppet. Like going up to the hook. So many clever little bits. I know. And then the wolf cave as well. I guess that's sort of like coming towards the end where he basically like manages to like get all the beavers to go into the wolf cave and then pings himself out using the catapult and the fans. Oh, it's so funny.
So random, but it's so good.
And they said they've got an upcoming project. I forget the guy's name, but essentially about like I think it's like a successful bank heist. It's more of like an action thing, and he's playing the main role in that.
Oh yeah.
Which would be so cool to see with the success of this, seeing what they do on a bigger budget. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Home Screen Podcast. Thanks again for joining, Charlotte.
Yeah, no, it was good to chat about the film, and it's interesting how like the more you chat about a film, even though you watched it wasn't even that long ago, but for me it is, you start to recognise what's stuck in your brain.
And I think that's a testament to this film, because there are some films that are just forgettable because they're just so predictable. You've seen it, stuff like that, like 100 times before, whereas this is so unique. But yeah, I think this will stick in my head, similar to how like Wallace and Gromit and things do, where you can just kind of recall exactly what happens when, because it's just such an instant classic.
Yeah.
So that's the end of our part of the podcast, but for the first time ever, we have a special guest. We're now going to hand you over to the star of the film, Ryland, as we chatted to him very briefly at the end of the evening by the merch stall. Here's him telling you a little bit about the rest of the tour and what you can look forward to in the future. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Just wondering, like, how's the tour going? What's the reception been like so far? Just what's the vibe?
The reception's been amazing. We keep selling out theaters, and I don't know. I think the UK has Beaver Fever. It's been amazing just touring around and seeing all your lovely theaters and just talking with fans of the film. So be sure to check out Hundreds of Beavers if you haven't already. I think it's available here on streaming and rental and Blu-ray and all that jazz. But if you can, definitely try to make your way to a theater, because seeing it in a theater full of people is definitely the way it was intended. So if you can, go to our website or check out our social media, like, say, Instagram, and you can see all the dates, all the upcoming dates. We're going to be in the UK and Ireland until May, so you'll definitely be able to catch it on the big screen. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of
The Home Screen Podcast.
The Home Screen Podcast. Thank you, everybody.